The best episode we've ever recorded.
That's right.
That's for sure.
Right.
What's new this week?
Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, prenup.
Oh, really? I haven't been paying attention at all to that. That's surprising, actually.
Tom Cruise's daughter going off to college. Oh, wait, that's a different podcast. That's not it.
So what's up with that? What caused them to do that? I would have thought they would never go that direction.
Who? Prenup?
Swift, yeah.
No, we aren't really talking about that. We can't talk about that.
It is actually a good topic, and it is a topic for this.
It's about vows and divorce, and that brings up an interesting
thing. I mean,
why?
I mean, they don't seem like they care at all about doing anything traditional.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, she's got a lot of money. She's got a lot more than him, I imagine.
Right. He's got probably a decent little purse there, too.
He's probably in the 10, 20 million. She's probably in the 100, 200 million.
Yeah.
I was going to say I sold, I think we were talking about it, I sold a company to a group in Hollywood, and I was out there for 6 months. And, we think like the general population is just too much into these idols, and holy cow, like literally people would come in and they would look and see who went to what party the night before, which famous, it was like, it was really kind of gross.
Yeah.
It was like, we think, we still get a lot of that pop culture news, but they take it to this level of who goes to whose party and every night. And it was
You know what really bummed me out the other day? Maybe you saw this. I know you're on X all the time too, but the guy that played Frodo in Lord of the Rings came out in favor of Kamala. And it's funny because he posted something on X about it, turned off all the comments because he didn't want to hear. Yeah. And he's like, I'm entitled to my opinion. And it's just like,
fair enough, but that is bumming out. Tolkien would be so sad.
Well, yeah, you can imagine what the memes were, right? Like Frodo's simping for Sauron, like what?
Nice.
Wants to let the orcs in,
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point though about just like Hollywood, like these are just people; they're not the characters on the screen, and everyone forgets that. And yeah, I mean, like he's got his right to do that, but it is
we elevate them to be, far more than they should be.
Yeah,
as I mentioned, their qualification is they're good at lying. Right. That's what acting is, right? Convincing someone of something that's not.
Well, true. I know, and what the Romans felt about acting. Right. I mean, it was like they were in the same class of prostitution. Yeah, because you're selling a piece of your soul for yeah.
And we do come 180 degrees the opposite direction.
But I'm just like I'm done though with the Hollywood stuff. Like I don't care. I used to care about movies and stuff. No. I go get my hair done. He's like, hey, you seen anything? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Because it's just that culture.
There's not.
It's not for me.
Valuable to spend your time.
No, I don't care. And I'm done like consuming. I want to create. Whatever's there is not just what I have to be satisfied with. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's a lot of people who are starting to think like that.
I hope so.
People are starting to get it.
I hope people wake up. The problem is they're still spoon-fed from the media, and that's they're stuck. I mean, Kamala's you see the polls; she's looking better, obviously, than Biden did. But because they're spoon-fed, there's nothing on her.
Remind me, I was talking to my wife about this. I was like, I think Richard has a polling-related company. Do you do something?
I do.
Okay. Can I trust the polls? Because I feel like the polls are not very trustworthy. How much of it is spin?
So some of them you can. I hate to send anyone there, but if you go to Nate Silver, 538, he's terrible, but they are a compendium of all the polls, and they grade them based on how they did on prior elections. Like my company's in there, and we hit 2020 like on the head, like exactly. I mean, not exactly.
Yeah. So what specifically did you get right?
Presidential.
Yeah.
But I don't remember how close. I mean, we were a lot closer than other companies. But
what's the difference then? Like, why are some companies
methodology? I was looking at the one that maybe it was Maris or Emerson, maybe yesterday or day before, and they had a poll like 30 days ago showing Trump up by 4, something like this. I'm not going to be exactly right. And then they have a poll out yesterday or so that showed Harris up by 2. So big 6-point swing that doesn't really happen too much. First of all, these big swings that you see, people, as you would kind of the smell test, people are dialed in and they don't swing that much. What swings is who they call, who they interview.
Yeah.
But the Emerson poll, they had changed their methodology from like 40% online prior to 67% online this time. That changes everything. Right?
Yeah.
It comes down to how much is online versus landlines versus cell phones, because that tells you the demographic you're hitting. And there's a lot of, you put a lot of statistics in there to try and get a good representation, but they don't try to.
Yeah.
They aren't. I think a lot of them are just after the after the answer that they.
That's what I wondered. Yeah, because CNN's always presenting certain polls, and you got people on the right. They're like, no, look at this poll, and it's just like
there's a guy, Rich Barris, People's Pundit. He's a pollster, kind of a one-man operation, and he's after the truth. I think he happens to be on the right side of the spectrum, but he calls it like it is, good or bad for Republicans, but he puts a lot of effort into getting the sample exactly right. It's like, we need northern Minnesotan, he's very precise in his polling, and that's something. But
yeah,
we'll see, won't we? You saw they took Kennedy. Took Kennedy off the ballot in New York.
No, didn't see.
Okay, so Kennedy, he lives in New York. He claims his residence is in New York, but he married that can't remember her name, that actress in Hollywood.
Yeah,
Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Girl. So he lives out there, but he still has an apartment in New York. He still pays taxes in New York. He has his driver's license in New York, goes back to New York all the time, and intends, when her acting is done, to live in New York. And he claimed New York as his residence in all 50 states for the election. And his attorneys beforehand said, look, you have a home in Massachusetts, you have a home in California, and this one in New York, and they're going to be after you no matter what you do. So the law is really about where you intend to return back to when you have multiple homes. And so he did that. And of course, Lib New York jury iced him. And so the party that's out to save democracy will do everything they can to prevent voting.
It's crazy. Nobody voted for Kamala, right? But they're all about it. And it was funny. I was talking to somebody not plugged into politics or whatsoever, but this speaks to like the situation. And I was like, look, man, she has no policy positions on her web. It's like, and he's like, well, I think it's really more about people just don't want to vote for Trump. And I was like, yeah, that's it.
At least
you could put a rock.
That's honest.
Yeah, you could put a rock there.
They tried that with Biden, and it wasn't quite enough.
We had a rock.
The
rock is still in place, actually, technically.
Well, who's running the country? Yeah, they just, as I said, they don't. She has nobody knows who she is. She didn't go through a primary, so they don't know she's against fracking. She's for arms confiscation of firearms. She's for
now. She's changed her position all the time.
Yeah, it's picking up Trump's positions.
Oh, yeah. Did we talk about that already? The tips thing? Did. So Trump, everyone was juxtaposing, like, here's how the media covered Trump, saying he's going to get rid of tips.
I saw that.
And here's, like Kamala invented it all of a sudden, and it's like really good.
Yeah. There's just no shame. I mean, literally Trump's been on this thing that, hey, we shouldn't tax tips. And the media comes out and says, oh, that's ridiculous. That won't make a difference, blah, blah, blah. And those are the headlines. And then Kamala comes out and they're like, amazing.
I know. Well, we're into politics, so let's stay on it. We'll have some tech stuff coming up because I want to get into some tech. But since we're here, that's ridiculous. Something that really made me very mad this week was, did you see this? The Taliban was parading around a bunch of our old equipment. Did you see the parade? No. I mean, if you looked at it and you didn't know any better, it would look like there's the Americans going to invade. It's like all these nice trucks and stuff. The helicopters are flying in. So that
I need a blood pressure pill or something.
Yeah,
that's so frustrating.
Because the argument, I believe, right, was like, I think the dude actually said it's harder to get that stuff back home.
Millie said it costs more to bring it back than to just leave it.
Yeah, and like
Trump's like, you're an idiot.
Yeah, and he said, well, it's all broken. And, oh, well, it looks like they fixed it.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I mean, no, brand new planes, not broken.
Yeah.
Trump's like, we put a half a tank. You're telling me it costs more than a half a tank of gas to fly it to Pakistan?
It's ridiculous.
Or somewhere?
You almost have to think this
They're
this
they
incompetence
intentional.
is not. It's not like you can't be that stupid and be in charge of the military.
Yeah, I think. Well, Biden is.
Yeah, but I think they know what they're doing. Like you hear Kamala get up there and she's like, "We're going to be unburdened by what has been." Like that is not a random line.
Yeah.
Right. That's communist. That's the revolution. Let's get rid of all the traditions and.
She's unburdened by the past. You saw her housing plan. Well, they're announcing it today.
No.
So at this point, a few hours it'll be solid. But she wants to build 3 million new homes and give like $25,000 housing units, not homes, housing units, $25,000 incentives or whatever. And I think that and groceries. Wants to put price caps on groceries.
Oh, I saw that.
Price controls.
Price controls.
Yeah, that's gone really well for everyone who's ever tried to unburdened by the past. You idiot.
You need to break that down for people that don't know, because even somebody of my age, right? I'm just kind of coming into my own politically, like digging into the past and stuff in the last few years. But I think a lot of people that I went to high school with, in college with, they'd be like, "Oh, price controls."
That's
like that sounds like that could be like my groceries are costing more. Like so. Can you break down for people like that?
Well, I mean, it's so you can attack it like experientially, what we've seen in the past, which is communism. Nixon tried it. Venezuela.
Nixon tried it.
Nixon tried it.
That's surprising.
He did wage controls. Yeah. So the idea is, hey, milk is too expensive. I'm just going to make a law that says you can only charge $3 for milk. Well, that doesn't work. I mean, it's the you throw supply demand equation out of whack. You get people not. And so what happens? Carter did this with oil and gas. And what you get is the demand goes to zero. I mean, the supply goes way down because I can't afford to make milk at $3. That's why I'm charging $6 or $5, right? So if you make me do it at $3, I just close my dairy farm. I'm done. It's over.
Right.
And so now what happens? There's not much milk.
Yeah.
And so now you have lines and shortages.
Yeah.
And nobody gets milk.
Right. The people who want to implement that, though, I don't think they're not stupid. Right. They know that's going to lead to some certain things.
You think so?
I do.
I think she's just stupid.
I think she is not super brilliant.
Yeah.
But I think there are a group of people, you call them oligarchs,
trying to break the system.
Absolutely. Like you can see the pattern. Like people have tried price controls all over the place. We know what happens. Like what comes after that? Okay. So a thing is what it does. Okay. They know that and they want that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gruber, Obamacare, when they put in Obamacare, they ended up getting the architect, this guy named Max Gruber, who like in a congressional hearing, he admitted it. We designed it to fail so we could go to single payer.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they intentionally going to screw millions and millions of people.
Yeah.
They're terrible people with no morals, and they'll do anything for power and control.
That's true. Did you hear about, speaking of, Keir Starmer, is that his name? Keir Starmer, whoever, the prime minister, right, over in the UK. They've been going crazy, arresting people. I think there's been over 3,000 arrests for things people have posted like on Facebook that went against the approved government narrative. It's crazy. And of course, that's not covered on like American mainstream news. So like nobody knows about that unless they're on X. But then they had a crazy statement where they're like, well, we may even reach our arm across the ocean there and try to extradite. Yeah. Which initially, I saw a lot of people like, try that. Yeah. And normally I would agree.
They did with Assange.
But they're in lockstep with the people running the country right now. Yeah. So it sounds very un-American, and your first reaction is like, that'll never happen.
Yeah.
However, I don't know that the people in charge wouldn't want to play ball with that.
Yeah, I could see it.
They want to chill out your free speech.
If you aren't absolutist on free speech, if you say, well, we need an exception for hate speech. Now it's a definitional thing. Well, what's hate to you? What's hate? Is that a microaggression, you snowflake bastard?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's terrible. And it's funny. I think I've mentioned this before. When I was young, all the dystopic books, all the dystopic stories were of future UK for some reason. Right? Like Brave New World,
That's
I
funny.
think, is like a UK thing, and Fahrenheit 451. And I mean,
I still haven't read
this
Fahrenheit.
is like Fahrenheit 451. Book burnings and controlling the. Yeah, it's really bad and it's really scary, and I'm afraid I don't see enough outcry amongst the future generation to Gen Z, whomever, to stem the tide.
I don't know. So everyone's talking about these black swans, like watch out for these black swan events. Okay, an assassination attempt will be like one, a crazy virus right around election time.
Monkeypox.
That would be another one, but I feel like there's some, those would be like, you could call some of those things like man-made or whatever. And even if you don't think so, they're just like crazy things that, just happen to happen at the election time. I think there's some black swans that can happen that no one's counting on. I say this as a person,
kind of the definition, right?
As a person of faith. Well, I mean a real black swan, and not the kind that like tanks everything.
Yeah.
But like
we win in the end.
Like Trump turning his ear like right when you couldn't, stuff that no one can predict.
Yeah.
And so you don't know what's going to happen.
He definitely seems more God-fearing after that.
Yeah, we don't know if people, like in Gen Z or whatever, if they're going to be able to get their act together. But almost like it doesn't matter. Like. This is gonna.
If God's in control, then don't sweat.
That's basically But I do have to bring this up. Did you see the clip of Keir getting kicked out of the pub?
No.
Yeah, some guy, I forget his name, in the pub. People like found out who it was, but here he is trying to get in with a mask. All his like security guards all masked up, and the guy's like, "No, you're not coming in here. This is my pub. Get out of my pub." And I think he was mad about COVID stuff.
Yeah.
But it's really funny, and he kicked him out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
The former Prime Minister of the UK before Starmer, Victoria Stammer.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know about the lettuce thing? Just I'm bringing it up because it's kind of hilarious.
I don't know.
So I think the BBC, not the BBC, but like Sun UK or someone, when she was put into the prime ministership, they like put a camera on a head of lettuce and had this like bet on who would last longer, the lettuce or her. And the lettuce lasted longer. She was out of office like that. And so she was speaking at a some kind of event, and some hackers had gotten into the event ahead of time and put up a banner, a motorized banner, that right in the middle of the event they hit the button and down comes a head of lettuce. And she left.
That's funny.
But left. It was, but
it's funny that someone took the time and went to the effort and actually did that.
Yeah. The UK's leading the way for our censorship.
Well, they're definitely a template or a cautionary tale.
And there's so many cautionary tales. I don't know why we need more, because people are uneducated, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I'm just amazed how many people are in the bubble. We talk about this all the time, but I just don't know that you can really penetrate the bubble that's been created. Because people are familiar. And I think that's what it really is. They don't want something unfamiliar. It's like, if you could trade, I think we've talked about this. There was a study or something, and it was like people didn't want to trade their problems for something even that you might end up with less problems because they're your problems. You're familiar with dealing with them, and I think you could substitute that for any situation. Like, people are just familiar with what they're familiar with.
That's right.
I think that's it.
I was talking to a Gen Zer who's trying to find his way as far as the job market and figuring out what to do. And he's a MAGA Trump Republican guy, but he's very much for government intervention in certain areas. And it's like one of the phrases that just keeps ringing in my head. He's like, well, the government failed the youth economically. It's like, well, it's not the government's job to serve the youth economically. No. What's that about?
So that's the problem number one. Not taking responsibility for yourself. If that's your attitude towards stuff,
that's probably one of the biggest.
Yeah. I'm working on that with my kid. Okay, what happened here? Like, don't say it's someone else's fault.
Don't point a finger.
Okay, but sorry to interrupt.
No, I think I lost my train of thought.
Why the government failed us?
The government prior to that. What were we saying?
Yeah. Just Gen Z and being familiar with stuff and.
Anyway, long story short, I think I worry that they don't see they don't see that this is a dire time.
No.
And they're gonna you give a little bit on the economy, you give a little bit on free speech, you give a little bit on guns, you give a little bit on this, and it's your republic.
Well,
as long as you can keep it.
I saw a great quote that encapsulates what you're talking about, and it was like something to the effect of the best way to keep someone imprisoned is to not show them the cage, like so something like that.
Well, that's good.
And that's basically. People are effectively blinded.
Yeah.
Like, not like, I don't mean like, oh, I mean like someone very effectively, they did a good job at it, blinded everybody. And I think it's, man, short of like a war of some sort, I think it's rather permanent.
I hope it doesn't take a major reset. School choice is gaining a lot of power. I think that might help if we can change the education of this next generation. That might help quite a bit.
Maybe.
But thank God for X and Musk, and that's exposure. You saw? Did you see the Trump Musk interview?
Oh, I did. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course, we got to talk about that. I mean, so I know I texted you and I was like, "Did you get in?" And you're like, "Did it take you?"
It was down probably a half hour. It took.
Yeah. So do you attribute that to a DDoS, or do you think it was just?
I don't think Musk is a liar.
Yeah.
So if he said that, I believe him. He has had too many things that gets him into trouble, that makes him look bad.
Right.
He doesn't seem to have a lot of hubris or ego.
Yeah.
It's just like,
well, they stress tested that with like 8 million people concurrence or something earlier. And then there's only like over 1 million. There's like, it was still a lot of people, but they had stress tested it earlier in the day.
Yeah.
And then you got the EU dude being like, don't do this. The EU.
Musk is
how
like,
is that not?
Screw you.
This is America. You're going to tell us not to.
Interview?
Yeah.
I don't have an interview with the.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's really bad.
What'd you get out of it?
I did see it had like, I don't know, a couple 100 million views and like 1 billion impressions or something.
Yeah.
I mean, like utterly insane. And that's great. I got it was two guys actually talking about stuff.
Yeah.
And
shooting the breeze kind of.
The media, all they took away was Trump's lisp.
I know. That honestly, that threw me for a second.
Yeah, we all talked about it as we were listening.
That was compression, right? That was compression.
Might have been. He said it was compression.
Well, some
I
people
assumed he had dental work or something. He doesn't drink. It sounded like slurring your words like when you're drunk. But he has never drank.
Well, I saw some video like from the room, and he seemed to be talking normal. Like
I think I saw. I didn't listen. They released a version of him in the room with another mic or something. And it wasn't there. Yeah. So, I mean, it could have been. I saw the phone. He had his iPhone, and there was like a little, maybe a microphone plugged in the bottom. So maybe that microphone was doing
right.
Something.
Yeah.
But
so you mentioned Musk, right? And you're like, thank goodness for Musk. And then we're talking about, oh, everyone's blinded. Well, I do feel like of all the people, he might be a decent person to kind of crack the dam of those, because like, for instance, I saw today he's bringing back the actual gun emoji that looks like a pistol.
I saw,
and it's not the water gun.
Kiss, kiss, bang, bang, and it's a
which is going to infuriate the safetyists and all the people who are like. So I remember when that happened.
I don't remember that.
And Apple turned the real gun into a squirt gun, and it was like, okay. So, it's little things like that are going to cause people to be like, well, why was it not like that in the first place? And
I didn't even realize it had been taken. Back. I just saw that he put a tweet out with.
Yeah. Well, what is that? I mean, the emoji thing, like turning it into a squirt gun. What is that? What were they trying to do?
And trying to, diffuse violence. I mean, it could be, right? It's like they think you take away guns, you take away things, less people will die. Until the government takes over and kills you all.
Yeah.
That's the case short term. It's maybe I wonder about this. I wonder if it's just everything they do is short term thinking.
Yeah.
Right? It's like instead of make them learn personal responsibility and get training for a career, let's give them money right now. Yeah.
Well, I think you could substitute emojis in this case. Like it's just a way of representing stuff. So it's the same with words. And this is why our AI is so important. I was thinking about this a lot this last week. I know you were too. But it's like words aren't just words. Words form your thoughts. Your thoughts inform the decisions that you're going to make. And that's what shapes your future. And so if you can't express something, or the way things are presented, whether it's an emoji pistol or like a squirt gun, like that really shapes how you think about stuff. Like,
absolutely. Let me look this up real quick. With objective reality, Margaret Thatcher, I think maybe I've mentioned this before. She had this great quote: "Watch your thoughts, for they become words. Watch your words, for they become actions. Watch your actions, for they become habits. Watch your habits, for they become your character. And watch your character, because that's your destiny."
that's your life.
It's a great quote, right? And so your point, you break one of the words, and you stop that, you're going to change people's thoughts and behaviors.
And Musk, I think he enjoys it. Like, I could see him being like, bring the gun emoji. That'd be awesome. Like, they're going to have a fit, like.
Well, it's free press,
Right.
And that's what I laughed at they were talking, Trump had the press conference on the groceries yesterday.
Oh,
And in response to Kamala's potential price controls. But no, I think he's doing that because she doesn't give any press conferences. And so he's doing like one every day now.
That's right.
He's just going at it. But the media they can't control themselves from attacking him. Yeah. Which is just billions of dollars of free publicity. Right?
That's true.
I think that's what happened in 60. I mean, they tell them, you watch afterwards and they castigate themselves. They're like, we couldn't help it. We give them $2 billion of free ad buy, or free coverage. But then they just turn right around. They're right back on it. So I think that works to our advantage.
Well, yeah, I think so. But I did see wasn't he going to fire some of his campaign staff, or people were talking about that?
It sounds like there's a little bit of
I'm not that deep into the weeds.
I haven't gone that far, but
are they not doing a good job in your opinion? Or?
I don't know, but I'm not the CEO of the organization. He is, and to his point, it's like, has Biden ever fired anyone?
Nah, right.
You got to fight in business, in life. People perform, some people don't. You got to churn.
Yeah,
that's just the way it is. Otherwise, you're gonna atrophy and die. And so I'm fine with that.
So what's this about Trump and his like mega cities, his future cities? Did you hear about that?
No.
Okay, I ran into this today. This is new information to me.
I'm
but
not gonna like it from what you say right off the bat.
Well, it says a massive part of Trump's second term agenda is to charter 10 new mega futuristic cities in various states on federally owned lands. So the quote is, almost 1/3 of the landmass of the U.S. is owned by the federal government, which is just a very, very small portion of that land. We should hold a contest to charter up 10 new cities and award them to the best proposals for development. In other words, we'll actually build new cities in our country again.
Oh.
It's calling them freedom cities.
That's interesting. That's not a terrible... He's pretty strong in the private-public partnerships, because, he did that with... Rockefeller Center and the skating ring. He's done this type of work with governments where it's like the government has the money, the property in this case, and let private companies do it because they're good at it. I suppose I wouldn't be opposed to that. You look at, people talk about the debt all the time, how 130% of GDP, whatever. No, but when you look in finances, you look at the balance sheet. So you look at the P&L. How much are we spending? How much are we getting? Revenue versus this is Congress and spending. You also look at the balance sheet. And the balance sheet is how much in debt are you? But you have to put your assets in there. Nobody ever talks about that. And I did analysis some years ago on the U.S. government, federal government, has a lot of assets. They have a lot of land. I mean, millions and millions of acres of land. I mean, an unfathomable amount of land. So this idea of maybe getting it back to the country, private people, because it's like untouched. There's so much land it's untouched by people. They don't, So
we're talking about like, it'll create jobs and it'll give people like, purpose. Like, generations ago when some of these big cities were just kind of getting going, like. Yeah. You got to build, it wasn't all just like built out.
I'm not usually a fan because, I'd have to think. Usually government involving themselves in a market like that is a terrible idea. But they're already in the market. They own the land. Mm-hmm. So absolutely that land should produce income. Yeah. Doesn't mean we should, put neon signs in the Grand Canyon. That's a debate to have sometime. That's interesting. I've had a few times with people.
Neon signs in the Grand Canyon?
No, I mean this. How much should the government have national parks?
Should they?
Like that, right?
Yeah.
So I grew up. I was a backpacker and mountain climber. And I spent a lot of time in wilderness areas, which, hundreds of thousands of acres owned by the federal government, untouched.
Mhm.
And I got to thinking about one day, and I loved it. And I got to thinking about it, and I thought, it's just pretty unfair that some, family trying to hack it in Brooklyn is paying taxes for me to enjoy this that they never get to touch.
Yeah.
Like 99%, I would venture, of people never touch federal parks and lands.
Mhm.
Maybe that's too high, but most of them, right? And
Yeah.
so that doesn't seem right. It should be a private enterprise like anything else. If I want to go there, I pay an entry fee, a ticket. Some company's incentive to keep it clean and make it work.
Mhm.
But the federal government, in my mind, it's not the right answer.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's sort of like ties into that eco, like environmental, like take care stuff. So that, obviously there's a clear reason why people on the left are like really into that. But it's funny because I know that people on the right, like I hear this all the time. They're like, I'm a Republican, but I'm also an environmentalist. Like I don't hate nature.
Yeah.
I want to preserve nature.
I don't hate nature. Like I said, I grew up in Colorado backpacking, and I think it's awesome. But
Yeah.
you can think the best way to preserve and take care of nature is by letting the market value it appropriately.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
And you mean,
Disneyland, Disney World is a beautiful, amazing park, right? That they keep, at least last time I was there, they keep clean, and the light bulbs all work, and and that's because if they don't do that, people will stop coming.
Mhm.
And there's no reason that national parks couldn't be the same way.
Yeah, that's interesting. Right. But did I hear a proposal? I feel like I did, where they wanted to stuff a bunch of migrants in because it's federal land. Like, where do we put them? And like make a tent.
I didn't hear that.
Tent city or something. I think that was a proposal. I don't know if that it happened.
Unbelievable.
We're both have some roots in Colorado. Did you hear about that Venezuelan gang that took over the building, and they had to, the city of Denver had to like evacuate the building?
No.
Because the guy who owned it, he was like, they took it over, and the city had to intervene.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, you in the UK over here, you do hear about a lot of crime that happens a lot. I guess you and I hear about it, and other people like us who are tuned into X.
Yeah. If you have a fair, at least an attempt at a fair source of news.
Yeah.
But the majority of people, I don't know. 20 years ago, you only had, 30 years ago, you only had maybe the networks, and that was all the news you got. Some newspapers. Yeah. All controlled by the left. So we probably have better shot at it today, maybe. Hopeful future.
Okay. I don't know. Let me read you this and see what you think. All right. Someone said, this is a meme. You watched the Hunger Games and you sided with the Resistance. Did you see this? You watched Star Wars, you sided with the Resistance. Watch The Matrix, Divergent, V for Vendetta, and you sided with the Resistance. When it's fiction, you get it. But you refuse to see it when you're living in it.
Nice.
Wild.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So
in this case, you side with the Democrats.
Yeah, I think it's because people yearn to have that, but in reality, they're scared. They're like, they're not going to be. You root for the hero on the screen because you have there's no.
Well, they're promised stuff.
Nothing's at stake in your life.
I'm going to give you cheaper milk. I'm going to give you a cheaper house. The house thing. That's what I want to get to. That thing floored me because we came out at my age. It doesn't seem that long ago, but 2008, the housing crisis was like directly, and I'll argue anyone on this, directly caused by HUD, FHA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and lowering the conforming. So Clinton, his secretary of HUD was named Cisneros, and Clinton, being a Democrat's like, how I get reelected, we need more home ownership, and we're going to get more people to own homes. And they're like, how do we do that? They're like, well, we'll lower the guidelines for people to be able to buy a house, for Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac to be the investor and buy back from Bank of America, whoever, buy the loan. And they did that, and it worked because people who couldn't afford houses or got bigger houses than they could afford did that. And what happened? We had the biggest financial crisis since the Depression, supposedly, right? And here's Kamala saying the same freaking thing.
Yeah.
16 years later, what do you...
Yeah.
They're terrible people. They're stupid or terrible, and I can never figure out the balance between those two.
Yes. Yeah. And they just want to blow up what already exists also.
That's true.
Yeah.
Change for change's sake. Progressive because they don't like. I read an interesting little analysis, just simple couple lines. Conservatives like what we have and we want to conserve it.
Yeah.
Progressives hate what they have and so they want to destroy it.
We've talked about this all the time, and I think about it all the time. You have to have a foundation. Society's been around for a long time. People have been around. They figured out like, oh, this works better than that. Okay, that's part of the foundation. Now you build on top of that. But if you keep wiping out your foundation, it's beyond.
And if you get everybody to hate it by only bringing up the bad points. So Christianity, great example. You talk to a secular person, thoughts on Christianity. Typically it'll be like, the Crusades, it's terrible. The Inquisition, it's terrible. Mm-hmm. And two events that were relatively minor, and I'll debate anyone on that, out of a 2,000-year history and all the good.
I would say genocide, Canaanites, slavery.
You get people to hate something, they'll work at destroying it. And so they're doing that with everything.
But how does that work? Because people are lazy. But
it's just a vote. That's all they have to do. Get you to hate it and you'll vote a change. Right? I mean, that's what the races are almost. They're almost always about that. They're very, very rarely about the future. They're about disliking hating what the other person stands for. Destroy it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate. But it's like, to your point, here we are, we're coming up to election. Oh, and now we're hearing about like, well, maybe they're going to cut the rates a little bit, like right before the election is like,
yeah.
And it's like, we talked about this last week too, but here's Kamala. She's making all these promises. And it's like, well, you have a little bit of power right now. I guess you could do that now, or you could have, why?
Didn't.
Yeah.
Didn't do it. Borders are.
So it's all pandering. And then they just do it whatever they want anyways.
Yeah. The only solution is to reduce government because this is going to be an ongoing
which
problem.
Won't reduce itself.
Won't reduce itself.
So then we've talked about this before. What is the actual answer? Is it something like the great sort where people kind of sort themselves out and it's just this state's doing well, that state's not because they did the policies?
That's what I think the answer is, but we got to get it out of the federal government's hands first of all. And I don't know how.
Because here's like New Hampshire, no minimum wage, and they also have the highest median income, no required gun permits, but the lowest crime rates.
No income tax, I think.
No income tax, and a $400 million surplus.
I've thought about moving to New Hampshire.
Have you?
Yeah.
Well, that makes it sound like when the government gets out of the way, then
kind of works.
Yeah.
Texas is an example.
Did that appeal to you, New Hampshire?
Example. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Mostly for those reasons, or
footprint in the Northeast. I had that land in Canada.
Yeah.
So I had thought about a house in New Hampshire for those reasons. It may not happen. They keep doing anything to get power. You mentioned the virus, the black swan. You saw the monkeypox. Now they found it in the U.S. in wastewater in San Francisco.
Right.
So the WHO is blowing that up, trying to make something out of that.
So do you think, it's been around, they're just talking about it more all of a sudden, just for the hype? I also saw, I'll just report the facts, right? There was no sign outside of the Republican convention about monkeypox, but there's a sign. I saw someone was posting, they're going to be posting stuff about how this could be a super spreader event at the Democrat,
Fear, control people through fear.
Yeah. I want to shift a little bit. I want to talk about cars. It's funny because in real life and in digital life, I've talked to some people who heard what you said about buying a used Tesla, and that resonated with them. You're like, I don't need to own it first. And it was a revelation. It was a revelation to me. I was like, hey, there's something to that. But not to my wife. She's like, I want a brand new car because I don't want, she's like, likes clean,
That's funny.
But I was actually talking to somebody else. We were having a chat and I was kind of mentioning like they had a Tesla and they bought it used. I was like, oh, it's funny because my business partner, we just had this conversation. With that said, a couple things. There's a Chinese car maker. I think their name is Zeekr. I could be wrong.
I saw that.
Okay. And did you see their new charge capacity?
It's like crazy. It's like, I don't know, 8 minutes, full charge.
Something like that.
They call it, the rating is called C. And C is the multiplication times the battery capacity that you can charge it at. And we're at like 2.5 C. This one's 4 C. So it's like twice as fast you can flood the electricity in the battery.
So I'll be honest. My initial reaction is usually like, okay, who do they rip off? but maybe that's not the case. I don't know.
Yeah,
it makes me
China.
mad when American companies go over and they give a big chunk of control.
I've worried about Tesla for his factory in Shanghai.
Right. But he was like the one company they let work out a separate deal, right?
Yeah, but that deal is technically majority ownership.
Yeah.
But I mean, spies,
even so,
IP spies,
you made it
come
too
over
easy.
Here to companies they have no involvement in and steal the IP.
So, do you think that I'm wrong? Did they acquire some knowledge?
I haven't looked into it. I mean, they're not doing anything.
That's a big leap.
They aren't doing the batteries, I think. I mean, I doubt they're the battery manufacturer. So this is just an advancement in battery. So the thing about it, we don't appreciate it because internal combustion engine cars have been around for so long, and you never saw major, it was really slow, gradual improvements.
Yeah.
But electric cars are tech products.
Yeah.
And how fast tech improves.
Yep.
And so batteries are improving like that. So many things the motors, everything's improving like that. So we're seeing great advancements. And it makes it kind of hard. Like I've been thinking, I told you my Cybertruck reservation came up. And I can buy now. And
you can?
I can.
What does that mean? How many months out?
Now.
You can buy it, but when does it arrive?
I could order. I assume it'll be quick, but I'm not doing it because $100,000, 20 for the Cyber Beast or the whatever beast mode, $120,000. I can't justify that.
You can.
No.
Okay. It's a business write-off. Slap objective reality.
Wrap it. We're gonna wrap the thing.
Oh. Okay. After this, I'm gonna work on convincing you to.
You try and convince me.
Yeah, but that's crazy. So. I mean, obviously, proponents of electric cars are going to be like, see, it's awesome. But am I wrong, though? Like, if everybody got on the grid right now and started charging at whatever speed they were charging, can the grid not even handle it?
Probably not. But the beautiful thing about capitalism is we respond to things almost immediately.
Yeah.
Right?
If someone can make some money.
Yeah. I mean, you'll solve it. Here's a funny, since you're kind of blossoming in your political and economic views. So one of the big evils people talk about is price gouging.
Yeah.
And so you'll have a natural catastrophe, a hurricane or earthquake or whatever. And there's laws in most states against price gouging. So example, Hurricane Katrina happens, the freshwater system's broken, and people want to get supplies to them. And there's laws saying, hey, you can't charge more than $1 a gallon for water, for example, right? Because if you don't do that, you're a terrible person, right? If you charge, this person's desperate and he needs water and you charge $10 for a gallon, you're a terrible person. That's price gouging. We're going to put you in jail. And that's so ignorant on how things work. If you didn't have that law, every small-time entrepreneur in a 500-mile radius would be figuring out how to load their pickup truck with water or their little helicopters or drones or whatever imaginative solutions, and you would get all the water you needed like that. Instead, the government, as usual, intervenes itself, turns it into a big problem.
Yeah.
And I don't know where I was going with that. The grid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no doubt that would work itself out.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. So, all right. That's one car related thing. And it's interesting from a tech perspective, but also cars and tech, something that actually, when I was out, I did a test drive. I don't know if I told you this, of a Tundra recently. This has been a few months ago. Mm-hmm. And we were in there and he's like, okay, you're going to have to subscribe to this. But if, trying to make it sound like it's not a big deal. And this, there's 3 different subscriptions for a Tundra. I just wanted a rugged vehicle I could haul stuff in. Yeah.
So connectivity package.
Yeah. For the screen.
What else?
Well, I don't remember exactly what all the things are. One was remote start.
Okay.
And there was a couple others, maybe. And I know Beamer was charging for your heated seats or whatever. I don't know. It's ridiculous. They're parceling it all out. But that's not even the point. So part of it is my wife in particular is really about privacy and stuff, cleanliness and privacy. And so I saw a video, and I don't know if you caught this. And this lady was like, I traded in my old Honda, which I'd had for a long time. And it's kind of like a dumb phone, on wheels.
Flip phone.
And now I got this new Toyota, and it's like a smartphone on wheels. And she showed like this little thing on the ceiling, and it was like all the privacy, like a privacy disclaimer that's like hidden under the thing.
And the visor.
And she's like, so I went to this website, and I forget what it is, and you can put in your VIN, and it tells you. So she went to the app first, turned off whatever she could privacy wise, and then put in her VIN on this site, and it showed all the things that were happening with her specific VIN.
Yeah.
And it was a bunch of stuff she never opted into. She was it was being tracked. Her information was being sold to people, to advertisers without her consent. And that brings up Ken Paxton. You like Ken, I'm sure. He's the attorney general down in Texas, I believe, right? Mm-hmm. He's suing General Motors basically for the same thing. So it's like a widespread issue. Yeah. And my wife is like, I mean, there's going to be a run on old cars. Like, people are going to want old.
Did you see Tucker did a Cybertruck review?
Oh, yeah, I did.
And he opens that with,
it was kind of a review.
Here's my truck.
Yeah, the old.
And it doesn't have, it doesn't have all these electronics in it because the government can't turn it off if they don't like me.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of a nice little
But you know what's funny though? Like, I feel like you get to that place in life where you enjoy the old truck, but you don't start there because you start like wanting the Cybertruck or you want,
I like technology. I don't know if I'll ever like the old truck, but
yeah, but I mean, but you would be okay with it. I think you wouldn't like it, but I mean, like because for you, it's not about
horse.
Yeah, but it's but it's not that status thing. Like people are like, no, I need to have the nicest, the best, and that's what they're working towards.
I don't need the status,
but then people
want the functionality. The features.
Yeah, it's like the used car thing. Like why? And it's like
I'm so stuck in my stupid minivan because of its functionality. It's obviously not, ego or hubris, or it's not a swagger wagon. And I'm not going to pick up chicks in my minivan. But it's so functional. It's unbelievable. Yesterday we have one of my companies has a storage unit, and I cleared out some things out of it and dropped those seats in the floor, and I've got a bigger space than a truck in the back.
Do you? Can you fit more in the Cybertruck? I'm going to work on this.
I don't know. We'll have to look. I have to look at the bed size in the Cybertruck. I mean, clearly, if you heap it over and it's But as far as cargo capacity, I look at a Tesla Model Y, and I don't remember the number. It's got like 60 cubic feet of cargo capacity. My minivan's got I don't know, with all the seats down, it's probably like over 100. It's crazy. It's like you could live in there.
Yeah, but I've seen some pretty cool additions that people have made for the back of your Cybertruck. Yeah. There's some cool stuff like an aftermarket. There's a big third party.
So you're going to really try and talk me into this, aren't you?
I'm going to super try.
Well, they don't have full self-driving on the Cybertruck yet either.
Oh, really?
Which is really interesting.
It hardly matters because
it'll be there, but I want self-driving like. I'm getting really close to buying a
I know, Tesla. But it'll come though because they update constantly.
Yeah, it'll come. I almost bought one that I was going to buy, just got sold on me yesterday. Just got the email.
Would you buy a used Cybertruck? Maybe that's someone wants to sell.
They're going to have to come down. I have a hard time justifying, for me, capital has to work for you, not against you. And so if you have $100,000 tied up in a Cybertruck, that thing's, that opportunity cost of $100,000 is $6,000 a year that you could be earning in the stock market or somewhere.
Right.
So there's $6,000. It's going to depreciate, 50% in 6 or 8 years. So what's that? $50,000 over 6 to 8? That's another, $5,000 to $10,000 a year. So you're losing like $10,000 to $12,000 a year to have a truck. I'm just not. That doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shoot. I'm gonna hit OR and say, how do I convince?
how do we convince Richard to get that truck?
I want to get really into the tech right now. There was a Catholic guy, I've been running into him because a lot of people have been talking about him. He published some. Well, I say Catholic in air quotes, but I still mention it because he's Catholic.
Okay.
But it turns out he was really more like esoteric, and he I don't know if he was like sequestered or what, but he wrote a body of work. I'm going to mispronounce his name here. Teilhard de Chardin. Have you ever heard of this dude?
Yeah, I've read him.
Oh, you have? Okay.
He was. I think he was a monk.
Okay.
Maybe.
But he never published his stuff until he died. After
he wrote
was
on the Omega
dead.
Point.
And he sounds like a lot of interesting things.
Yeah.
But he was kind of a communist, like a techie.
I was just specifically interested in his. There was a book came out in the 90s called The Physics of Immortality,
Okay.
which was,
And he showed up in that?
No, well, it led me to him.
Oh.
This was written by a guy named Frank Tipler, some physics professor at a university. And he was basically laying out a proof for God in physics.
Oh, okay.
Like, we're gonna find the God particle in quantum physics, and if it has the weight between here and here, a testable. This is how science
Was this a
works.
Christian dude?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. But that's the concept behind science. You lay out a hypothesis,
Right.
You create experiments and tests that can prove or disprove it,
Right.
And so he did that. And anyway, he had his thing way before Elon and his ilk. His thing was that basically we create AI that evolves into God, and it resurrects us. But it was actually, it would turn off a lot of Christians, but
yeah,
it was a really interesting book. And this,
I don't like it myself.
This Desjardins or whatever.
Yep.
He had a similar theory much earlier about the omega point. And it was kind of similar. Yeah.
Okay.
So
omega points. So everyone's been talking about this concept of the noosphere. Noo, I may be mispronouncing it, sphere.
Okay.
And apparently this is something that kind of ties in and relates to him, because he tried to package it in like Christian lingo, but the idea was sort of like humanity will attain a quote unquote like Christ consciousness where you become God. You become Christ, which is not Christian.
We join in the Godhead.
Yeah, but the way that could be facilitated is with this like noosphere sort of a thing, and then people on the list were like, "Oh, well, you could do that if you had Neuralink, and you combine that with Elon satellites floating all around, and
collective consciousness."
That's right, collective consciousness, and everyone is basically one entity thinking the same thing. And I think Musk actually trends in this direction a little bit. And I don't like that, and I want your take on it.
Yeah, no, he definitely.
That's like the end of the individual. Totally.
That puts us into a collective for sure. I don't know. It'd be interesting. I haven't studied to see if Musk has any intention of uniqueness of character continuing.
For him, the only thing that seems to matter is consciousness. Yeah. Doesn't care if it's organic or artificial.
So let's talk about consciousness. I don't know if we've touched on this. This might make a good little interesting bit for people. So in the 90s, I was diving deep in what is consciousness, right? And a guy named Roger Penrose, who University of Oxford, amazing Nobel physicist.
Old now.
Brilliant guy.
He's still going?
He's still going. He was delving into that. And about the same time, this guy named Stuart Hameroff was... he was an anesthesiologist, really very interested in consciousness, because people still don't really know what happens when you put someone under.
Yeah.
Like unconscious, what's that mean? Right?
Which is a huge
your brain's
point.
Still alive.
That's a huge point, because people don't understand. They think science has figured everything out, and there's so much that we don't know.
They don't. And so I'm going to show my hand here and tell you part of my conversion, how I got to where I'm at. Anyway, for me, I had to understand how God has a mechanism to communicate with us, right? How this can be interpersonal. And from physics, if you're just from a scientific standpoint, you can't see that. It's like, okay, a soul, well, where is it? What is it? How's it work? Anyway, so Roger Penrose wrote a book called Emperor's New Mind, I think is the first one I read.
It's funny.
What's that?
It's funny.
Yeah. And he hooked up with the Stuart Hameroff, and their thesis is that their structures in a cell, how you have whatever few million cells in your body, and inside the cell, we all learn kind of the simple cell model. You got the mitochondria and, the cell wall and so forth. There's these things, and it's not like that. It's like the size, if you picture a cell the size of a house, you got this little tiny mitochondria factory, and you have these threads like spider webs, like thousands or millions, I don't even know how many going from the wall and the outside world to the mitochondria. And these are called microtubules. And these microtubules, it's insane. There's like little motors that walk on them. So they'll grab something.
Kinesin protein.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know about it. It's amazing stuff. Their theory was that within the microtubules, there's a chance for quantum coherence to happen. And I'm like, yeah, wow. If that's true, that's something. Right?
Yeah.
God could be right in there. I'm there. And, it's sat around for 20 years. Some outfit in China, some university in China just proved that that's possible. So for a long time, people say, not possible. Biology is not the circumstance for quantum coherence. You need superconductors, blah, 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 minus 400 degrees. But maybe a few years ago, someone found that there's actual quantum effects happening in photosynthesis in plants. People never understood it's like a plant's 100% efficient. It's like, it's not possible. You have to have inefficiencies. And sure enough, there's some quantum action going on there. And now there seems to be evidence that it's happening like inside cells and, in a human environment, a wet, hot, a warm, moist environment.
But this is what led you to feel like, okay, there could be...
I've worked out my mental map. Here it is. There's a potential there because I have
for a soul or for God? Or for both?
The two.
Okay.
However that works. But I always have to... I had to marry my science with God. Yeah. Right? Science is expression of God and how it works, but how does it work? I have to, because I don't see it. I want to see something. Anyway, now I find it pretty interesting.
That is very interesting. Now my immediate reaction is like, that's cool if that is something that helps somebody feel like, okay, it's intellectually defensible then to believe in God. When before you
doesn't mean you are God. Doesn't mean you know. No.
But also my reaction is kind of like, like if there are some assumptions like baked into that sort of thing, where it's like, and I think we might differ. It's been a while. This is like going back to the roots of our podcast. Like we used to really hash this stuff out. But if you're a physicalist, then you're assuming that everything is like, a physical thing, even like a soul or your consciousness. But if you're leaving the door open to do science and like, well, maybe it is that, or maybe it is this. I'm going to try to find out to the best of my, it's like there are some things that are clearly immaterial, like numbers, like concepts like justice, love,
forms.
So I mean, for somebody like me, it's like I don't have to feel like it has to be a physical.
Most people don't.
Don't. But
it doesn't even need to be a physicalist. It doesn't even need to. It's like, but in my mind, there needs to be a mechanism by which it happens.
Yeah, right. There's got to be interaction.
The supernatural world has to interact with the natural world. I think for me, okay, I have a potential of how that's happening.
Yeah.
But again, it's like, we don't understand it. Einstein called it, quantum entanglement, spooky action at a distance, because he couldn't even conceive, and people still really can't. We could take the whole idea, if you don't know about entanglement, quantum entanglement is particle here, particle across the galaxy,
right?
Instantaneously, interact, and that's fine. But at least we know that that's how it works.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean we know why it works.
But see, we want to know,
like how versus why. That's the key.
Yes, but like we do crave the knowledge. Like we want to know, and it's funny because we have the limits. Like we can't know it all. And we don't have to, but that's where you get this thing about like faith. And it's so dumb when people are like, oh, faith, because everyone has faith in in something.
Yeah, it's something.
You don't know it all. You can't know it all.
The knowing it all that we want to know. I think C.S. Lewis, maybe Mere Christianity, and many Christian theologians before him talk about a whole for loving God in us.
Yeah.
Until that's full. I think the same thing about like knowing God, understanding. I think curiosity is part of that on my side.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. I definitely think that. Yeah. And it gets hijacked. It gets hijacked by our digital drugs that, there's a dude who you and I are going to have a conversation with here soon. I was looking over some of his, X posts, and he mentioned, or maybe it was in a podcast, I don't remember, that a lot of this stuff is just geared towards entertainment. like the tech world, Silicon Valley stuff, it's like really great, the algorithm and everything at delivering entertainment. And like and that was actually a really interesting thing, because what else can tech do? You know, like that's what's made money. That's what people have adopted. But but that's like what it's all geared towards. That was quite a
maybe. I think some tech is geared toward productivity and creation, right? Like a better mousetrap isn't really entertaining, but it's.
I suppose. But do you feel like the trend is for more productivity for more?
Most people, yeah. I mean, clearly, entertainment is
even as AI comes online and like. And people don't have to do as much productivity, maybe, or whatever. Yeah. I mean, you and I think we're going to want to do something no matter what. Like, even if we don't have to.
Some people don't. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's easier and easier for people to substitute and shove in more entertainment to trend that way than to want to be less lazy and.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people, existential questions are scary and maybe unsolvable or disconcerting, and so it's easier just to pop on and binge watch something, or have a bunch of alcohol, or just
talking about those cities, like there's an appeal to like going to a frontier and building, and you can't. Where can you do that in Minecraft these days? Like, what's left to build? You can do some business.
New Brunswick.
yeah. Or I get why a lot of younger people are like really thrilled by the idea of like, let's go explore space. Like, give me something to dig into. Like, and I feel like we're missing all that. So then this becomes a substitution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the rat park. It's the rat in the cage. Let's just pump myself up on dopamine and call it good. That's clearly where we're headed.
Yeah.
I saw last night. I was reading a statistic, 67%, 57 or 67% of women between 18 and 25 are on antidepressants.
Yeah.
Over half.
It's almost like the default thing now to do.
Yeah. That's
what's your takeaway on that?
Oh, that's too long and complicated. We need we need purpose, mission. We need to, take personal responsibility, like you said. We need cognitive therapy, not necessarily from therapists, but internally.
Yeah, cognitive behavioral is like the one thing that works. Well, it's like I was talking to somebody. I got a buddy, and I was like, "Hey, did you go check out the school year starting? Did you meet the teachers?" And I think he's got a kid in first grade and third grade, and he's like, "Yeah," but he was telling about one of the teachers, real weird sounding person. And so personally, I'm like, I'm glad that we're doing homeschool, like whatever, but here, you're going to let this person raise your kid spend more time with them than you.
Yeah.
And you're going to sweep in and do a little sports or something after and put them to bed. But it's, and then you wonder why. So this conversation came up with
broken.
Yeah. Well, like with the SSRIs, I was telling my wife about it. And she's like, well, why can't she stop working? They work together and, take it. Well, because society has built it up where, so they've got the house that they have now. I bet they'd have to downsize in order to do that. Like, it's just not going to happen. They're not going to reverse.
They value the stuff more than the kid.
Yeah. But when you swirl it all together, I mean, then there's depression. Like you think that you're doing the thing that's going to make you happy.
Yeah.
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 So
no, it's a real problem.
This is why I come back to you every time. It's like we need better examples for people to follow.
We need examples, and if I had any impact on you homeschooling, I think that's an example. We need. I had a family that I think I told you. I had my wife find a family that raised a bunch of kids, homeschooled, and if I didn't have their example, I'd probably be too afraid to experiment. Because you're gambling with your kids' lives. Right?
Yeah. Well, I give you credit for that, a lot of credit. Because Candace, we were talking about this the other day. It was like, if it hadn't been for Richard like showing us about the stuff, I don't think we would have done it because we didn't know anyone else, and it was just that stigma and
big stigma.
Yeah,
and I had doubts for years doing it. Years,
but that's just one example.
They lessened. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know if they're lessening for you. As you meet other, the more news comes out, the more
I'm proud to say it now.
Yeah.
I mean, like, because I'll tell you how it really is if I encounter, and if someone has any pushback, I'll be like, my kid's not supposed to fit in with society. Like, and I will push back proudly.
My kid's going to be here. Your kids are going to be if normal is all these kids on SSRIs, my kid's going to be here.
Yeah, and just glued to their phone, then no thanks. But see, that's just one area, the homeschool thing. Yeah. But I think people just need examples in general across the spectrum of things, and that's what's severely lacking.
You know, we could talk about like so many things. Keto, if we didn't have YouTube or X and people talking about that, you know, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't think, I better not do that. I'm not going to risk my life not taking a statin.
Yeah. You know? So I think the real issue is, as we start to wrap up here, is courage is contagious, and you have to see other people be encouraged, because that's what it was. Doing the homeschool thing, that took like some courage.
Yeah, this definitely takes
changing
courage.
Your diet takes courage. Speaking up, standing up for your rights when everyone's telling you that'll be racist.
That's interesting.
It's like
you know, a small point that I observed some years ago. You look at we mentioned Taylor Swift. You look at these music pop star idols. And all the little kids want to emulate them.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting, because those pop stars are trying not to emulate anyone. They're trying to create their own Lady Gaga persona. So it's funny. You have these courageous, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got to get more into that. We need a good mix here. This is a fun episode with the tech, the politics, and the philosophy. Philosofuture. It's all in the names. There
you go.
This is a fun one.
Yeah. Well, good stuff. We'll talk again next week.
Yeah.
We'll see if Kamala will do any type of interview or any tiny thing before next week.
Yeah.
We're down to like 80 days to the election, right?
Yes. And if you want to shield your mind and your information pipeline, get on objectivereality.ai, because it's like ready to go, basically.
That's right. Give you answers.